Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. First of all, welcome everyone for our exciting OCTAVE Insight here, learn and interact with advanced analytics experts session. Today we have a very exciting speaker with a very exciting topic, especially for the advanced analytics experts and also especially for the people who love sports. So in soccer, especially in the soccer area. So today we are having a discussion on data science in football from Hoax to game change as a part of webinar series OCTAVE Insights here, learn and interact with advanced analytics experts. Organized by OCTAVE, the John Keells Group Data and Advanced Analytics Center of Excellence. So the webinar series has been curated with the intention of providing a platform for advanced analytics professionals to interact with the industry experts from globally renowned advanced analytics companies. So my name is Rajitha Navaratna and I'll be the host for the evening. So I'm working as a principal data scientist at OCTAVE, where I work with several data scientists in retail, beverages, ice cream, and insurance. So we hope this will be a very interactive session. So please free to ask any questions during this session, and we will take those questions at the end of this presentation. And you can ask these questions in the chat box, so you can ask any questions regarding this session. So let me introduce our speaker today. So we have a very exciting speaker. So we have Dean Wang. He's the director of product management at DataSpark. So he's a data scientist in profession in Singapore and obtained his PhD in operational research from Nanyang Technological University. And he has been working in the field of advanced analytics in data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence for many years. So he played R&D roles in some of the tech giants such as Apple, SAP, and also Google, and before joining with McKinsey and Cooperative as a consultant. So he's transitioned from a developer to a delivery and product manager in his subsequent stint in the Quantum Black and Google and Apple and DataSpark. So he has experience across telecommunication, banking, retail, manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, and obviously in sports. And he has co-author of different articles, and he's a recipient of 7 patents in data analytics and related solutions. And Dean, we are really excited to have you to talk about and listen to some of the exciting work that you guys have done in sports, especially in football in Sri Lankan terminology, otherwise we call it as soccer. Okay, over to you, Dean.
Thank you, Rajitha. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm happy to share my experience and my what I have done in the space of data science in football. So I think it is a little bit unlike the other technology talks, which is a lot about the actual algorithm or the actual math behind the data science. I think I can take a fun angle because football or soccer is a fun topic for me. So I want to make it less academia, but more as a story. So what I'm going to talk about today is less about the actual algorithms used in football analytics, but how data science involving this industry from a hoax or from a mistake to a game changer to an industrial changer. So before I talk about football, I want to introduce myself maybe again. So I'm Dean. As Rajitha has said, I'm a data scientist based out of Singapore. I began my career in Apple as a demand forecasting planner. So I was forecasting how many iPods they will sell each week or each month, each quarter. Then I joined SAP as a data scientist, followed by McKinsey, Google, and now with DataSpark. So I used to be a more hands-on coder in terms of data science. In SAP, in McKinsey, I used to deploy a lot of R and Python models. I started to use Scala a lot more in the recent years. But the role I played in Google and the DataSpark transitioned to more of a project or product management, where I try to see the value out of data science and translate this kind of value into business decisions. Where I find it is quite useful. Maybe that's the reason why today, when I look at data science in football, I always look at the angle how this technology is transforming an industry rather than how the actual algorithm is implemented. Outside the data science, my two favorite topics will be Lego and football. I'm a Manchester United supporter. Hope not many of the Liverpool or Manchester City supporters are dropping off now. So you can see I have a whole wall of Lego bricks behind me. And today I'm happy to share my other two passions, how data science and football work together. I wanted to make this, although we are doing this virtual or webinar, and I can't see you, I wanted to make it slightly more interactive than I talk into a camera. So I have this kind of tool or voting in my slides. However, I can't see your reply. So if you can click 1 or 2 in the chat, maybe Rajisa can tell me what's your preferred opinion in this. So I want to know a little bit about you guys. I know you are here because you all love data science. So how familiar or how in love with football or with soccer are you? Do you love soccer? Hear about soccer, but a little bit mad about it? Or it's like, what is football? What is soccer? If a lot of people choose 3, I think I will just spend some time to explain what is soccer as a football as a sports game. So Rajisa, let me know what is a rough split. Fingers crossed, and not too many 3s.
Definitely. So I think people are writing around. So let's give her 1 or 2 minutes.
Not sure if there's a really like football fan. Not sure if you are following the Olympic Games, football games, or the earlier Euro and the Copa American games. And if you are really a football fan, you will know why I'm wearing an Argentina jersey today, right? There's big news coming out of the Argentina football star. So we'll all wish Messi the best after Barcelona.
So far, many of them are saying number 1, and there are few responses also coming about all the way to rugby.
Okay. So I should use soccer. So thank you for loving football, loving soccer as I do. Hopefully, this talk will be an interesting one, which falls in the topics you feel passionate about as well. Okay, so today I want to talk about 3 topics. The first one is how football analytics started with a mistake. Of course, calling it a hoax may be a little bit exaggerating, but it did start with some mistake. I will tell you the story behind it, and let's say, as a data scientist today, if you can spot the mistake, or if you can understand it as a mistake. And then I will talk about in the past 10 or 20 years, how football analytics or how data science in football actually transformed the game. It is literally a game changer, because for football game, if you don't do data analytics, if you do without data, you are left behind, that's for sure. So it actually becomes a game changer in the last 10, 20 years. So let's take a closer look what happened to transform data science from a hoax to a game changer. And then let's discuss and learn, how can we learn from that? We're all doing data scientists. We're all creating our own models. We're all generating the insights. So how can this kind of work change the game, just like football analytics? So first of all, I will introduce you this gentleman called Charles Fripp. So Mr. Charles Fripp is actually a Royal Air Force accountant in World War I and II. He's also a football fan who loves attacking style of play. One day, he was watching the game in the stadium, but the game was so slow that he got bored, and he started counting different things. This is how he, as a football fan, started to look at the soccer game from a data point of view. just like me, he was trying to combine his profession with his passion, right? I think he has a content as a profession, so he's interested in data. So he wants to understand the football soccer game using data as well. So this is how everything started. There is a very tiny clue hidden here. He's a fan of attacking style of football, and he gets bored at the game. This actually have some impact to the later decisions he made, but we will come to that later. So at that time, as you may know, there's no sensor, there's no even like video recording of the football game. He literally started to counting everything using a pen and a notepad. So he started to do all this data collection by hand and by using his eyes. So here are some his findings from more than 500 games. It's actually an outstanding number. So now, for the most of the players, they play around 50 games per year. Of course, as a fan, you may watch more than that. But I think 500 games will still cost Mr. Rip maybe 3 to 5 years to complete. Also, collecting all the data by eye and by hand and by writing them down is a huge amount of work. So I believe he showed a lot of dedication to this passion, and he did a great job in collecting this data. So from the data, these are the things he found out. It took 10 shots to get 1 goal. So the shot to goal ratio is about 10 to 1. 50 goals were scored from 0 to 1 passes. It means that it either is you stop the ball from the opponent and try to score the goal, or it's a very simple pass and then it's a score. 80% of the goals are scored within 3 or less passes. This is the most conclusion he made from the data. We will see the impact of this later. 50% of goals come from breakdown in one team's own half of the pitch. It means that if some team make a mistake in their own pitch, it actually makes it more likely for them to concede a goal by their opponent. So what they do, they need to move out of their own half of the pitch quickly, right? So one fun fact, it's not what he found out, but how he was doing this data collection, right? It took him 3 months to analyze the World Cup data from 1958. So it means that by writing things down and cleaning up all the notes and complete all the analytics, it actually took him 3 months. Let's use this as a reference point and see how the game has changed today, later. Okay, as I mentioned, the most important conclusion he made is this one. 80% of goals are scored within 3 or less passes. So how can we interpret this insight? Or how can we interpret this finding? Naturally, he believes that since so many goals are scored with less pass, we shouldn't play a passing game, right? We should keep the pass as few as possible. If you can score a goal with 1 or 0 pass, as we can see, half of the goals are scored in this way. So we should always try to score the goal with less pass. So this is a conclusion he made, and it actually shaped a play style for decades. So the position of football, or the position of the ball in soccer, was undesirable. This is a conclusion he gets from the statistics. Of course, there's a lot of interpretation here. It can say that the long pass is more efficient, and we should get to the opponent side as quickly as possible. Gaining possession within shooting area is a vital source of goal scoring opportunity. So it means that you should pass the ball to the dangerous area as fast as possible. This is the first attempt of data science or data analytics in the field of sports, not just the soccer. We believe this is an initial sports analytics as well. It is the first ever time someone tried to use number or data to optimize some sports strategy. So, so we have all these insights. Not only the football fan, as Mr. Reed himself, are interested in this. This is actually endorsed by multiple national football associations. The most famous one is, of course, Mr. Reed's home country, England. And what I'm showing here is accidentally a goal that's scored by England in the 2004 Euro Cup. How many passes are involved here? 1. So this was a desired way of scoring goals for England football team in the early 90s or even in the mid 80s, when they use this kind of decision or use this kind of insights to shape their play. Not only England, there are other football associations actually recommend this type of way. So all the North Europe countries like Sweden, Denmark, or Norway are famous for like playing high ball, using head a lot, or play a simple pass forward. And countries like England, or like even for China for the longest time, they are trying to play this long ball. So the fundamental guideline is not more than 3 passes. Try to get to the penalty area. Try to get to your opponents less than 3 passes. Of course, there are other teams who do not play with this principle. So if you, as you guys are football fan, you may well know that the South American countries loves a passing game instead of loves a possession game or passing game rather than being direct. So they actually have a different way to play. However, at that time, this kind of play didn't get to validated by any number. It's just the way those teams prefer to play. So that's actually the 2 way of playing football there. One is backed up by data. One is just people's natural instinct. So which one is better? If you guys can recall, in the 80s, 90s, or even in the early 2000s, which style was more successful? It's actually the passing style become marginally more successful. Of course, Germans have their time, won some World Cup, and England has their time to be a strong team. But it's actually the passing game become more popular and more successful. Why is it so? So now let's say, I think I have give the answer away this, right? So I already said it's starting from a hoax to a game changer. So I think everyone will just say it is a hoax. The method is actually flawed. But why it is flawed? What is the flaw? Can you guys spot it? Maybe let me take some time for you to think about it. Why the method is flawed? What went wrong? Okay, so let's look at the other side of the data. I think what Mr. Rip collected is from the passing and the scoring point of view. What is the percentage of goals are scored by fewer passes? But if we look at the game, there is a natural split of total pass, right? In most of Mr. Rip's statistics, the number of plays are shorter than 3 passes. There are very few of them actually more than 3 passes. So the baseline is not even. He's doing his analysis on an unbalanced data set, and there is actually a hidden baseline. What's more is the total number of goals caused by these passes are also different. Although from the goal point of view, a lot of goals are scored with 3 or less passes. But if we compare the success ratio, it's actually the longer game, the more passes leads to more goals, right? So the mistake is, if you look from the goal point of view, of course, a larger percentage of goals are scored with more passes because the game naturally have more plays of more passes. But if we take the angle of looking at the plays or the passes, we can say, if you play a passing game, you actually have a higher chance of scoring a goal. Maybe a pie chart is not the best illustration of this. So let's look something like a confusion matrix. I always hate to explain a confusion matrix because it always confuses me. So let me take a attempt here. So let's say these are actually fake data. Let's say with less than 3 passes, you have 16 goals and 84 no goals. Meaning for 100 times you try to play a direct game, you score 18 times and you didn't score 84 times. And because it's more difficult to play a passing game, so we only have 10 instances of like passing game, more than 3 passes. And among them, 4 scored goal and 6 didn't score goal. So if we only look at goal, this is valid. 80% of the goals are scored within 3 or less passes. 80% of them are scored within 3 passes. But if we look vertically from the passing type of view, in this one, the scoring opportunity is about 16%, right? 16% of the plays get a score. In this one, it's actually 40%. So the chance of scoring goal with more than 3 passes is actually 2.5 times higher than a direct game. So which one do you think it is more convincing? Yeah, I already said that this is a mistake, right? So maybe this is a right way of interpreting it. I would say this one at least considers the naive baseline of the sample split a little bit more carefully, but it may still not be the right conclusion we can derive from this answer. There's another aspect of Mr. Rip's statistics. As I mentioned, he actually collected the data from more than 500 games, and these games are across different levels of proficiency. So some of the games are played by, let's say, English, local or national leagues, and some of the games are actually World Cup games. So the standard of this game can be quite different. So what happened is that in World Cup, actually there are more passes, there are more plays with a large number of passes. So still, this is an illustrative number. So in World Cup, people actually tend to pass more, and in English game, there are actually fewer games or fewer plays people manage to pass more. Why so? Can I think of a few reasons why this way? Of course, in English game, I think people read Mr. Reid's conclusion and try to play a long pass game. So people try to do less passes. That's of course one reason. Another reason is that the quality of players are different. In English league, even when the players try to play more passes, they couldn't because the pass got interrupted. So it becomes less passes per play. But in World Cup, because there are more like high skill players passing the ball around, we actually have more plays with larger amount of passes. So the sample basis is also different. By combining them all and analyze as a whole, we may create the bias as well. So in this kind of statistics, if you don't look at the baseline, you don't look at the quality of your sample, it is very easy to make a statistical error. This is even before any of the modern time data science being applied on top of this. By simple descriptive statistics, people can easily make huge errors. So this is a mistake Mr. Rip created back then, 50 years ago. So I don't think we can claim his idea of like 3 passes or less creates a higher chance of goal as a valid conclusion. But I still believe he is one of the most successful pioneers in the data science area. And of course, he's the pioneer in sports analytics. I think the why he succeeds is actually he covers all these 3 things. He collected the data, even with pen and notepad. He collected the data manually or by eyeball in 10 years. That's actually a great achievement. I don't think anyone like you and me can do this today. And second, he translated this data into insights, meaning that he didn't stop by showing the numbers. He tried to tell the story behind the data. So he tried to interpret the data, to relate the data to something valuable in the game, like goals, and to try to derive these insights. Although from what we see today, his statistical idea or his statistical analytics is flawed. But I think the attempt to translate the data into insights should be recommended, should be recognized. That's actually a great achievement. And what more is that he didn't even stop at insights. He translated into actions that changes the game. So not only he tell everyone that, okay, there should be less passes, he tried to influence people to change their action according to these insights. Of course, in this process, he get help. He get endorsed by the English Football Association. He get endorsed by different coaches. They are their sponsors. So these sponsors helped him to translate these insights into actionable items in the game, and they tested it out. Of course, the result, some people may be happy with the result, some people may not be so happy because the insight is flawed. But this is actually a very good data story. If one day we can tell a data story, we actually pushed the data collection, generated the insights, and translated it into action, I think as a data scientist, we should be very proud of ourselves. So this is the story of how football analytics started in the middle 1960s as a mistake and evolved in the next 60 years. So just like a football game, this is our halfway of the presentation. Instead of taking a break, I think I would ask you guys to post whatever question you have into the chat so I can see. And by the end of this presentation, I'm happy to address all these questions. Yeah, so if you have any questions regarding the first half or it comes out in the second half, feel free to drop in the chat and I will try to answer as many as possible by the end of this webinar. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit to this century. So there's another gentleman came up. He's a Mr. Hope, or Professor Hope, I should call him. So do any one of you know him? Anyone, if you working or have worked in SAP, I think you know him. He's one of the founders and the former CEO of SAP. He's one of the 5 founding fathers who left IBM and started SAP. Maybe less of you know you also used to be a young football player, and currently he's the owner of his youth club, Hoffenheim. So he became the owner of the club in 2000 something. So he became the owner of the club and pushed a lot of data-driven or technology-driven things there. What I think a coincidence is that you can see the shape of the logo. I don't know this is a coincidence or if Professor Hope actually have this preference. Actually, the logo of SAP looks similar to the logo of Club Hoffenheim. I have the honor to work in SAP, also like on a related topic. So when I was working on SAP, we actually used the Hoffenheim data to do a lot of analytics. That's where I started to do this football analytics thing. So that's how I become very interested in this and believe that data science can actually be a game changer in the football games as well. So we talked about how Mr. Rip collect the data, right? So he collect by eyeball, by pencil, by notepad. So now, how we collect the data? There's 3 ways to collect the data now. So if you look closely, this player, although they are in training, they are wearing this jacket. That jacket is actually a sensor jacket to monitor the heartbeat as well as the location of the player. So not only we can know where are the players in a game, we can see how their heartbeat, how their breaths are taking place during the game to know what's the physical status of that. And in the middle one, it's actually a real-time player detection in the game. So this is use computer vision to isolate the player from the field so we can actually track them. And we also have drones to do the same thing. So drones fly up high and collect the locational information of the players. Actually, there's a lot of interesting stories, even just from the data collection point of view. So when I work with, when I was working in SAP and work with the football club Hoffenheim, sensors are not allowed to be on player during a game, during a like official or formal game of football. We can only do this in training. And we do it to an extent that we can actually electronically relive the game. So there were 7 sensors on each player, and each sensor will transmit more than 200 data points per second to the data pool. So basically, one project I started initially is to relive a football game using the sensor data. Although we can't really recreate the look of the player, it's basically the matchstick man, but we can actually electronically relive a game using the sensor data well by the players and also in the ball. And this is not allowed in real game, meaning that in an official club or national game back then, the players cannot wear this kind of thing. So we have to use cameras or this kind of videos to tag the players. So the next part of the bigger project is how can we use computer vision to detect the location of the players and detect the position of the ball, as well as the referee here. It seems to be a relatively simple task now, right? We now can use convolutional network to do this quite simply. Back then, I don't think we have this kind of a deep learning technologies ready yet. We are doing from very fundamental, like frame by frame analytics to the video. And we have a baseline algorithm. But one of the very fundamental flaw of the algorithm is that we can't really tell the football from a player whose head is bald. So whenever if there is a bald player who uses a head to kick the ball, the system will just mess up the location with the player and with the ball. That's one of the most difficult bug that we had in this algorithm. And by any means, we can't really dress it up as a feature. So we actually spend a lot of time to correct it. And one thing even more difficult is that not for every match you will have a good view to capture this kind of locations using videos. So we have to sneak in cameras and find a location in the stadium to hold the cameras and like record the match so we can actually analyze the data afterwards. And the last one for the drones, there's also an interesting story because there are 2 types of drones. So every club now use their own drones to like collect the video from a bird view and analyze the location. They're actually spy drones sent by like their competitors to like to pick their football game as well. So not only drones are deployed now, the like anti-drone devices are also deployed by a lot of football clubs in their training sessions. So the way we collect the data have evolved a lot in the last 10, 20 years. So what are the things we do in a football game? Or it's actually much more than a football match. Think about the use cases in football. It's actually go way beyond in a game. It goes through different entities in the club or in the football or soccer industry. So for the players, what we do is we do injury prediction, we do movement recommendation, we do position analysis and the training evaluation. So most of these are coming from the sensors we installed on the player. We know their location, we know how they move, we know how effective the training is. So basically, we actually can recommend in a game how they should move you should move faster in the first half, or you should move slower when you are defending certain type of play. So this kind of recommendation we can give. One of the most unreasonable recommendation we gave to a player is for the German fullback Lahm. It's actually a very good player. He used to be the captain of the German soccer team. In one game, the recommendation is that you should speed up by about 20% in the second half. So the chance of a German team win will actually double. So this is the recommendation we gave to him. And I don't think by any means that is a reasonable recommendation, right? So who can control your speed of running in a game? Even if no matter if it's maximum speed or average speed, it's just a nonsense to me. Anyway, we shared it as an insights. When we read the result of the game, he actually did that. He increased his speed in the second half by almost about 20%. That's amazing. So that's actually one of the greatest football achievement that I witnessed. And of course, in that game, the German soccer team won. So the algorithm worked. So this is the type of thing we do on the player level. For managers, they're interested in different things. They're interested in formation recommendation, like how the team as a whole can play. And they can do stamina monitoring, like who get tired, who need to be substituted. Player scouting and evaluation. This is particularly true for young players. So how do they buy young players in and maybe grow them to a more successful player, either to score more goals or to sell them with a higher price? And then we have real-time match report. So we process the locational data in almost real time, and we transmit everything on iPad. I do have a video, but I don't think I can show today because of the copyright. So if you go to YouTube, you can actually see there's a video how SAP use an iPad app to help the German soccer team win the game. So everything the manager needs to know is actually shown on iPad. So he can read like who is moving faster, who is moving slower, who seems to be with more energy, whose energy is a question mark. So all these reports are shown there. And for teams, when the manager and the players play together, there are other topics that we analyze. One of the, so of course there are opponent analysis. What is the opponent style of play? What is the tendency of the using certain tactics? There are also strategy interpretation. So some of the manager actually want to have a quantitative measure to each of the tactics he have in hand, like whether I should play 4-4-2 or 4-3-3, which likelihood is higher. So we try to evaluate this. And the personality and the traits matching is actually also important. So when a club or a team buy a player, they actually try to analyze what are the personality preference, whether this player gets angry easily or it is a very gentle or happy player most of the time. So this kind of personality and the matching is actually important to the club as well. And eventually as a club, it basically operates as a company, right? So a lot of things that the other company use, they also use data science. They have their fan-based management. So think of any of the supermarket, they have this kind of a loyalty management system that's the same as a football club. They have their fan-based management type of thing. There are also digital marketing and promotion, which is the same as any banks or any like digital marketing stuff. They're actually sitting and crowd management, which is actually quite interesting because in club after each match, how do they make sure the crowd move out of the stadium without a fight? That's actually something data analytics can actually help them by channeling different supporters into different areas, or even just plan the different seats in the stadium. And of course, there are social media management, which is very widely used by other companies as well. So data analytics in football is no longer within the match, how do we improve the performance, but to cut across all these topics, which are very interesting. But today, I'm not going to dive into, deep dive into all this. I want to look at one particular metric that is used more widely. It is called expected goals. So expected goals is the probability of scoring opportunity that may result in a goal. So think of by any player, by any action he's doing in the field, actually can have an opportunity or can have a impact to the goal chance, right? So this is a measure that people try to measure that. So the three graphs shown here is actually 3 stages of measurement. When people started to measure the expected goals, it is directly related to scoring chances or shots. So if you shoot in a close range, of course, the goal expectation would be higher. If you shoot from a long range, the goal expectation will be lower. So by counting the number of shots in different areas, you actually have a expected goal chance. Then people want to improve this, right? So rather than saying that, okay, it is a near or far shoots, we can actually get more granular to split this area into different grids. So a shot happening in certain grids maybe is higher than a neighboring grids or in a even symmetric grids on the other side. So for each grid, we can actually allocate a value of goal scoring chance if a shot is taking place there. So this is like the version 2 of expected goals. And the version 3 actually taking passing into account as well. So the argument is that, of course, the immediate goal scoring chance is created by shots, but the passes are also leads to goals, right? So if a player decided to do a very good pass, there should be goal scoring expectation in that pass as well. So they not only look at the shooting activity in this grid, they also look at the pass in different locations to say which pass actually have a higher impact on the goal scoring opportunity. So this leads to a new way of looking at that. A modern way of looking at the goal scoring opportunity is actually a Markov blanket approach, which the whole game is decoded, is encoded into different states. And in different states, there's always a transition possibility with 2 end states. The desired end state is actually scoring a goal. Of course, you kick the ball into the opponent's goal. That's a goal scoring chance. And the not so desired chance is lose of possession, right? So if you lose a possession, actually it is the other parts game to try to score in the goal. So for each of the play, it ends in one of these states. So what are these states? What is S1 or Sn? This idea is actually published. So as far as I can trace back, it is published in 2011, which happens to be the time I worked for SAP as well, but I didn't really work in this particular area. I was too busy finding the algorithm to identify a ball head from a football. So in 2011, what happened is that essay was published to split the football fields into 7 different zones. And they separated the footballers' action into 30 plus actions. So there are about 200 states. So they collected all the data from English Premier League, as well as some national games, to see what is the transition probability between each of the states. So they have the first baseline model of expected goals. It means that if anyone take one of these 30 plus actions in any of the 7 zones, one scoring chance or one expected goal score can be put into this action. So we can either know each of the player what is his goal scoring, expected goals throughout the game. We can also know as a team what is the expected goal numbers in a game. So in most recent researches, of course, like any of the data science analytics, right? The data exploded. So now people are using a much finer definition of the zones. So in one of the paper I read, they actually have 7K zones. Basically, they have 1 meter by 1 meter zones defined in the field. And they have 50 plus actions in the game. They also train the model by different time of the game, as well as a different player position or player topology in the game. So this one, the earlier method is just one player doing one thing in the game. Now they actually want to analyze where the impact of other non-playing players' location or position to the goal scoring opportunity. So all these are collected to create the current expected goal model. So as I said, there are two ways to use it. One way is to look at a player. What is the chance they created? So in this one, there's a player Haaland, which is a fantastic goal scorer. He actually only have 5.1 expected goal opportunity, but he scored 11 goals, which means he's actually a fantastic player, right? Because by any of the statistics, it shows that the expected goal is much lower than the actual goal he scored. We can also look at a team view, like this is a Manchester United in a particular game. Each of the actions the player taken interpreted into a expected goal value. So we know that where this team is creating more opportunity than our other areas, apparently the attack of Manchester United is a little bit driven by the left-hand side, right? They have a slightly higher scoring chance attacking from the left-hand side. So maybe they are doing something right on this side, and maybe this side can improve. If you are a Manchester United fan, you would know that the right side is actually a long-time weak spot for Manchester United, and that explains why since last year they are trying to buy Sancho, which is a right-wing player. So let's say next season with Sancho, if they will improve their right-wing plays. But let me show you this. It could still be a hoax because the expected goal doesn't really tell us anything. So on this left-hand side is actually a World Cup game between South Korea or Germany. So if you are a football fan, if you watch the game, I think that's one of the most memorable games because Germany lost 0-2 to South Korea. By the way, when this game is played, I already left SAP and I didn't really work with the German soccer team anymore. So when I watched the game, I was half happy, half excited as well. So South Korea won, but look through the game. Their expected goal is never higher than the German soccer team throughout the match. What is that tell? Of course, it tells that South Korea won the game as an underdog with less domination. It actually means that expected goal is just the expectation, and it needs to be translated into action to actual winning. On the right side, it's actually a league table. I think it's almost the end of the season. It's after 32 games into the league. So the difference here, plus or minus, is a difference between the actual standing of the game and the expected standing if expected goals are used to calculate the score rather than actual goals. So some team can move up by 12 positions if expected goals are scored. So it means that they have either they have a high expected goal, but they didn't manage to score those goals, or people playing against them have a high expected goal, but they managed to defend all this. So is this the right way of looking at the expected goals? I think if we look at the expected goals and try to predict the winning or losing, we're basically doing the same thing Mr. Reed did with his statistics. It's a much better measure if we compare in this way. So if we compare the expected goals with our actual goals, the higher the difference is on a player level, it means that the player can score a goal in an unlikely situation, right? So in this particular 2 seasons, Messi was doing very good in scoring like impossible goals. he scored more than 30 goals, and the difference is actually more than 12, which means that his expected goal scoring is about 20, but he managed to score more than 30 goals. And Benzema or Richarlison, Bentek is in here, which means that they actually have a lot of good opportunities, but they didn't manage to score the goals. I see there's a question about asking either Ronaldo or Messi is better. I think this chart tells a lot. On the right side is actually expected goals versus expected assists. So this is another way to use this data. In this one, of course, we want someone to be here, right? There will be a lot of goals and a lot of assists. So Luis Suarez was best at that time because he played with Messi. So there is a lot of like expected assistance there, right? So this, I think this is a better way to look at the expected goals and is the expected value, rather than to use this to indicate a performance. It is used for relative value, relative measure to see who is doing better or worse than expectations. I think similar things is done in other industries. So for example, for supermarket, we look at the expected revenue. We look at the expected profit rather than the absolute profit to see who is doing better or who is doing worse. So I think this is the same way we're interpreting this kind of expectations. Having said that, I think football analytics is still a game changer in nowadays. Maybe there are different ways to interpret the expected goals, but this is the impact of data science. As I said, in about the year 2000, that is when Hoffenheim is taken over by Professor Hope, and we started to use technology and the data science in this. And you can see how they started doing afterwards. They are now a strong team in the top league already. And of course, in 2014, SAP helped the German soccer team win the World Cup game and beat Brazil 7-1. One interesting thing is that only after they beat the Brazil team, SAP announced that they are actually partner with the German soccer team rather than before the game. I think they are not so sure how much they can help back then as well. And more than that, it's more than data science and analytics. It actually become an industry. There are activities, there are performance measurement, there are media management, there are organizations, there are games and bets in the sports analytics industry. So people are not only looking into the in-game analytics, but everything around it. So I think it is very safe to say that football analytics or sports analytics by itself is an ecosystem, is an industry already. So if we look back, what is the story of data science in sports or in soccer? We started with Mr. Rip's idea. FA endorsed this idea. Different teams start to adopt the 3 passes or less tactics, but they lose the game. So people don't trust the data analytics anymore. Then in 2000, the sensor and the video technology improved. We can stream the data and do analytics. We can do real-time reports. We can do injury prediction. All this helped the German soccer team to win the World Cup. However, they lose the Euro Cup. And then it becomes a normal situation because everyone is talking about football analytics. Everyone is talking about its expected goals. So it started to like land in a middle area. I think the same trajectory applies to a lot of analytics or data science industry as well. We started with one idea and we get sponsorship. We do our POC. Then we find out, oh, it's difficult to scale up. There's no scalability in this POC. Then the idea gets quite done. But we start to collect more data. We start to do more efficient data processing. We start to try different models. We start to build stronger use cases. Then we can have our first adoption. Then we will solve the issue and the mistakes in the middle. And then finally, it becomes BAU. The end game of data analytics or in football or in any industry is when everyone start to do that. So it may give you the edge in the beginning with the new use cases or the new technology, but fundamentally, when everyone start to do the same analytics, the edge actually disappears, and you have to do other new things to bring the edge back. I think this is a fundamental truth about the data science nowadays, because everyone is doing data science in every industry. It's not a question whether you want to do or not. It's a question how you want to do it. So the mission of a data scientist is transformed from delivering data projects to identify the new areas where data science can create new value. I think this lies ahead of us. For every data scientist nowadays, we have go past deploying the model, develop the POC, or deliver one use case. We need to think, how can we use our technology and knowledges to transform an industry to be a game changer? So that's why I want to share the story of data science in football with you. I think it does not just apply to football, does not just apply to soccer. It applies to any industry, to any learning as well. I know I'm a little bit late, but so let's look at the questions now. Rajisa, is there any interesting questions you think I should address?
Heidi, and thanks a lot for the very insightful talk. Yes, so you've got like quite a bit of questions, so I'll just take one or two questions from here and there. So one of the questions people are asking, like, so you already answered about Ronaldo and Messi, and is it possible to predict whether a player is going to leave from a particular club or not? Can we use data to understand whether someone is going to leave from a particular club and maybe even?
Yeah. So maybe for the first question, I'm a Manchester United fan, right? I should be biased to Ronaldo. I think he's also a very, very good player. But from a data point of view, by a lot of the data I have seen, in a 90 minutes game, Messi shows much stronger contribution to the game and consistently over, let's say, 10 years. That's actually a much greater achievement than Ronaldo. I think for Ronaldo, if you look at the thing he won, how he keeps up the game, how he built up his skills, he's also for no reason I would consider he's not a good player. Yeah, and for the player leave a club or not, actually this is we brought this topic with Hoffenheim as well, but they are less interested. Sometimes they want the good player to leave with a good price. So the question is not to predict whether a player will leave or not. It's to predict how much they can sell the player. If the price is right, they can do anything. So the player to leave the club is never a target function, but we do have indications like, okay, this may be the highest price you can get to sell this player. You may really want to consider that. And a related topic is that we actually helped some company to predict whether their employees will leave the company or not by a similar algorithm. And the one interesting thing we found out is that if someone starts to have less lunch in the office, it's a higher indication for him to leave the company. I don't think it applies to football club, but that's one interesting insight we did from that project.
Thanks. So just because you were talking about this, Brazil versus Germany match in 2014. So I just I was looking at this match also. When you look at some of the stats on that particular match, right? So I was it was 2014. That was I was in the club in US. If you look at those numbers, as I remember, the number of shots that Brazil had was 50. The number of shots that Germany has, as I remember, it was somewhere around 15. It's a huge gap. And when you look at some of the shots like this event type of data, when you look at the number of shots for the particular goal, I think Brazil had more shots compared to Germany. It was 13-10 or 13-12 something like that. But then Germany was scored 7 goals. So the question we had was like, oh, were they lucky on this particular match? But what was happening, because even though the Brazil had more passes and more shots to the goal too. So then that's one of the areas, this expected goal type of things, and can we use this data to understand this measure of coming up with the quantitative and qualitative results. So any insights of for that particular match, like? So they had like more shots compared to Germany. It was like 3 times, and still they were only able to score just one goal compared to like Germany, who had like 12 shots and they scored 7 shots to the goal. It was interesting to see in your presentation.
Yeah, so I think even when the SAP folks watch the game, I don't think they believe that they will win, and that no one would believe they will win 7-1 before the game. So it went outside the expectation in any way. But I think when you read the match using the shorts, right, we call it the first derivatives of the statistics. So like the first intention is always to compare the shorts. But the funny thing is that if you see the history of how we calculated the expected goals, it started with shorts, then transforming into locations, then transforming into passes as well. So people start to realize the first derivative of the most directed course of shots does not indicate a good scoring opportunity. It actually, the goal scoring mechanism actually lies much backwards to how the team build up this play and create that opportunity. So the way we see the game is that, of course, Brazil have more shots, but maybe the way they build up to these shots, the way they decided to shot, is not optimal. But the Germans have done a much better job to build up these shots to shoot only at the right location to score in these goals. So this, I think, is how this kind of data got interpreted. And this is true for the SAP system they delivered. It's not only to recommend, okay, you should have more shots, which is like a no-brainer, right? The recommendation is actually how you should pass your ball to the right flank or to the left flank. How do you need to try more long balls, or you need to try more short balls? This kind of recommendation. So this is how they translated the data into a strategy. And the final thing is that, of course, there's expected goals, but I think the fun of football or for any execution is how do you beat this kind of expectation, right? So, for example, if you are running a supermarket, by the location of the supermarket, by the shelf standards, by the way you organize all your stock in the supermarket, there's always an expected revenue, expected profit you can get from this supermarket, and it can be pretty accurate. I have done this kind of project. I know it can be very accurate, but the excellence or the things what the supermarket need to do is to beat this kind of expectation, right? So we tell you how this expectation are built up. You need to think out of all these factors to see how can I leverage things outside this model to beat this expectation. So that's why I think why the football is still a fun game, because even with all these measurements, with all this data, there are people trying to beat the expectation, to go out of the expectation to do greater things. So that's why even with the data set mind, when I watch the game, I still think there's a lot of human factor and make the game exciting.
So, Dean, like while we are in the topic in expected goals, there's a question regarding expected goals. So mainly regarding these features, like how do these models account for player correlations? A goal would depend on the quality of this assist as well as other contributing factors which lead to the goal.
Yeah, so because we have like a lot of data to analyze now, right? So we can actually analyze on a player level the tendency of this player in different playing styles, or let's say if the other player in this team is more playing a long ball, whether this would be helpful or not helpful for a particular player in this team. So all this value can be generated from the history of the games. So for now, I think for each of the high-profile players in the main leagues. For each player, they have this kind of data profile, including how is his or her performance in a, let's say, 5-year games. That may be more than 200 games we can collect. And for each club, they actually do this in each of the training sessions as well, with a much finer granularity. So you can see the sensor, they wear 7 sensors in the training game, right? They can collect much more data in training. So they know if the team start to play long ball or short ball, what's the impact for a particular performance. So all this can be factored in this model to see the impact of the decisions. So it's actually a very much deep learning type of model with a lot of features engineered in the background.
Another person is asking about some of these practical examples, especially in the European clubs. Will you be able to discuss a couple of practical examples that they have used this?
So Hoffenheim is the best practical example, right? I think they are the father of all clubs. Now, actually, I think any club you can name Europe is doing this. The pioneer in English Premier League is actually Manchester City. Manchester City actually worked with SAP as well in developing some of these models. Manchester City tried to work with Quantum Black as well. I don't know if it worked out, but they are trying different technology providers to establish the analytics as well. So, and in most of the football clubs in Europe, there is one department, usually with 10+ people, called sports science. So partially it is with the official scientists to see how do they cure the injuries, but much larger part of it is doing this kind of data science modeling to see how do they analyze the opponents, how do they improve their own performance.
People are asking about, have you considered looking to data science and analytics in other sports, like example cricket, baseball, and etc.?
I know there will be a question about cricket, and I'm prepared. Actually, IBM has developed this intelligent critic system as well. I think in one of the World Cups, they also deployed it with some team. So it's more of a. So I don't know the cricket game well enough, but my interpretation is that it's a play-by-play game, right? Rather than two teams play head-to-head against each other. So it's actually a lot of decoding can be generated from there. So for each throw, the system can actually analyze the likelihood of the tactics they would want to play per player or per team. So what's the best strategy behind this? So this kind of thing. For baseball, it's the same. Whether they want to trick you or they want to throw a straight ball, that's something that become predictable. I would say that the impact of this is actually more significant than football, because football, the uncertain, there are actually much more uncertainties in the field because you have 11 players, that is maybe 1,000 thousands variables more than what you can collect in a cricket or baseball game, right? And one of the most difficult game to analyze is and of course it need to be a famous game, is actually basketball. Basketball is much more difficult than football because it's so much more quicker. We typically don't really have enough data to build up a play. Within 12 seconds, they need to shoot. So actually, there's actually a very few data points we can build into a play. So when basketball teams use data analytics, they are much more on the injury prediction side and game contribution side, rather than like in-game strategy or in-game tactics.
Yeah. Even in basketball, I have seen in my previous place we were working on. Can we query some of these, similar players, like, or similar behaviors? Like, so you were given a particular position. Can I figure it out, like whether you can find some similar type of behaviors or similar type of playing positions? And ghosting kind of analysis is one of the one of the biggest area, especially in basketball.
Yeah, they have the contribution to the game, right? But that's actually the first derivative measure. So it's a very direct measure saying that if this player is on the court, how much points the team is leading.
Yeah.
So it's actually a very direct measure for the game performance, and it's difficult to get to the second degree yet to be still impactful in such a quick game.
Yeah, even I have seen like these days, people use these sports analytics for Olympics, individual games to understand their performance. How can we compare some of the previous behaviors compared to the current behaviors, especially in the weightlifting. These are like individual type of games, and also tennis and swimming and those kind of sports as well. Yeah, very interesting stuff, Dean, and like there's a lot to talk. There are a lot of questions coming out. Unfortunately, we are running out of the time, and obviously now we are 10 minutes past. Maybe I will wrap it up here. So thank you all for attending this webinar with Octave, and I hope you learn many things from Dean regarding sports analytics and how we can use sports and data to get a lot of insights and how we can use for especially for the soccer. So please follow Octave on LinkedIn and also in YouTube, so you can see in LinkedIn the future events. And recording of this session hopefully will be at Octave YouTube channel tomorrow. And before you wind up for today, please fill the feedback form. And the link to the form is given in the chat in the downstairs. And hope you had a fantastic session. And good night and stay safe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Dean.